whatever's being discussed in the organization or the health system, wherever, I think that a nurse has to be at every table and bring that perspective to that decision, to that discussion, whether it's with the finance person or quality person or engineering or anything. A nurse's perspective is huge when we're talking about healthcare.
Oh, I gotta go. I've been working, told them please don't hit my phone. I'm in my zone, bruh, just leave me alone. Was on the road, but I swear I'm coming home. Now the drinks on me, I think we need a toast. See, I did it for me. Now my old friends calling, told them nothing's for free. Told me time is money, dog, swear I paid all my fees. I was starving for this game, now my family can eat.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Cup of Nurses show, here with your hosts, Peter and Matt, two nurses on a mission to change this world, one conversation at a time. If you find a value on the show and want to join us on this mission, please share and review the show. It would mean absolutely everything to us. cupofnurses.com for the latest updates, merch releases, and all the show notes. For our lifestyle podcast, you can check out wearefrontlinewarriors.com.
In this episode, we would like to introduce you to Dr. Terri Ann Parnell. Dr. Terri Ann Parnell is a nurse, a recognized health literacy expert, and an award-winning author. She's a principal and founder of TAP Wellness Coaching and Health Literacy Partners. Her extensive nursing career incorporates hospitals and health system management, administrative and leadership roles, as well as faculty roles in schools of nursing, medicine, and healthcare administration. Hey, Terri, thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your time. Can you give us a little bit of a background about yourself?
Sure. Thank you for having me, actually. It's a pleasure. This is always the toughest part of podcasts because I have over 40 years in the nursing career. So I'll keep it very brief. But essentially, I was a diploma graduate back in the day when they had diploma schools. And I went to school in Greenwich Village, New York. So it was a very interesting introduction to nursing, working in that environment. And then over the years, I did bedside nursing. I was a clinician, and then obviously worked my way up, through always changing my career. I was a manager, a director, and then I went into the leadership side of it, away from the bedside, was helping to run, a tertiary hospital, quaternary hospital, actually, in the C-suite. I was an associate executive director. And then after a few years doing that, I went out to a vice president role in a very large integrated healthcare system. So I had a system role where you worked with, 17, 18 hospitals, ambulatory facilities, physician practices, and then launched a new office with a physician colleague of mine. And then I decided, what am I going to do now when I grow up? And I decided to leave and launch my first business, which was Health Literacy Partners, which was always my passion, health literacy, communication, meeting people where they're at to provide their healthcare. And did that. And all along the way, prevention, wellness, clear communication has always been my thread that I've pulled through everything that I've done, and for myself personally and in my career. And then just around when COVID hit, I decided to finally do what kind of was always a hobby for me and launch my wellness coaching program specifically for healthcare professionals only, and designed only for healthcare professionals. And then along the way, even though I was a diploma graduate, I went along, I ended up getting my doctorate in nursing practice. I became a fellow in the American Academy of Nursing. I've written a couple of books, book chapters, I publish, went on mission trips. It's a lot I've taught in different schools, nursing schools, healthcare administration programs, physician programs. It's a little bit of everything. That's the amazing thing about nursing, actually. You can pivot every few years, as you well know, and do something new and interesting. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
That's amazing wide variety of experience that you have, and you're a great example of how you can pivot in nursing whenever you feel like you have outgrown your current role or need a time for a
Yeah.
change. So with your vast experience in leadership and being a director and vice president of a business, what do you think that nurses and healthcare professionals are currently lacking or needing in the profession?
Well, it's really hard now. What they're lacking. I don't know that nurses are lacking anything. I think healthcare has changed dramatically, obviously, as we all are living and experiencing. I think nurses, inherently, the nursing profession, people go into it because they're caring and they want to care for others and they're empathetic and compassionate. And the issue with that, or the double-edged sword, is that they never take care of themselves, right? So it's a blessing and it's a curse. They're always caring for other people and they tend not to put their priorities first. So I think nurses, if I had to, pick something, I think we need to build up resilience, and set boundaries and practice saying no, and build community and find those that we can go to for support. When we're having a challenge, at work, I think community and culture at work is huge. So all those things are really important in finding that work-life balance, right? And as far as the career, I think the healthcare organizations are experiencing that now, in New York, finally. But they need to give nurses the resources that they need to, have safe patient-nurse ratios and have, provide safe quality care and not feel like they're, burning the candle on all ends. So, good benefits, pay for, give them a salary that's appropriate for what they're doing. Maybe flex better hours, flex time. We all don't have to fit in the same bucket always of 12-hour shifts. Years ago, that was never a thing. You worked 5 days a week, but you worked like 10 hours every day, which was no good, which, wasn't well serving either. So I think there has to be more agility on the side of the healthcare organization, but we're getting there. I think I'm optimistic. I think, unfortunately, you need to go through a little of the rough patch to get to the other side.
Yeah, of course. And Terri, since you have a vast experience in bedside and leadership positions, how do the roles and responsibilities change from bedside to a leadership role? And how did you manage to meet the needs of both nurses and lower management underneath you while still maintaining the goals of your higher ups?
Yeah, it's a challenge, and each situation is different. I think, first of all, working with a team, right, who gets it and is really important. My theory was always, if whatever I'm looking at and whatever situation we were working on, if I always looked at it through what was best for the patient and the family, I felt like I could never go wrong, right? So that was first and foremost. And then in order to do that, we had to support our healthcare professionals, right? Because then that wouldn't be in the best interest of the patient. So it's hard, it's challenging. It's not an easy role. Your budgets are getting cut constantly. You have to do more with less, and you have to make some difficult decisions. But again, I think going back to, the culture of the organization, transparency, and including the bedside clinicians, not just nurses, all of them, at the table when decisions are being made is key. They're living it. They're in, deep in the weeds there. And if they're part of the process and understand all sides of what you're dealing with as that administrator, you can come to a collaborative decision and give it. I was a big one on everything's a trial. Let's give it a try for a little bit, see how it works. And, we have to change, we'll pivot and change. But I think including them in the plan and the process and the thinking is key.
A little bit ago, you mentioned agility to change as far as organizations. Can we identify these organizations that need improvement in agility? Is it the associations for nurses? Is it more the hospital organizations that need to kind of collaboratively work together with healthcare professionals to maybe pour into as far as resources into nurses or pour into patient-safe ratios to protect the nurses?
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with the resources that nursing associations or organizations have available to them. So I really couldn't speak to that. I know it's challenging, in healthcare organizations and systems. And sometimes the larger they are, there may be a few hospitals or a few entities in that system that really are carrying the weight of the entire system, because some just do better financially than others. Some organizations, you have a facility you might have that may not be financially doing well, but it's really important for the mission of the organization. So another hospital or ambulatory setting in that system, right, may be kind of carrying that facility financially. So you have to look at the big picture, look at the vision, look at the resources and take it from there. But it is sometimes moving. It's like turning the Titanic, right? It moves very slowly because it's so large. So I think it's just trying new things, thinking out of the box, taking out sometimes would say a clean white piece of paper, and let's just take a totally different approach to it, to what we're looking at. I mean, how do other industries do things? We could adapt from that. I mean, healthcare has done that all along. So I think that's a good way to look at the existing resources that you have and how can you utilize them a little differently.
From like a business and healthcare perspective, what are some of the major struggles that hospitals have? Is it the budgeting? Is it retention? Is it bringing on physicians? Is it retaining patients? From like you could say the healthcare and business view of things. Because as nurses, all we really focus on is like unit satisfaction, making sure that we're taken care of, but we don't really always think about the bigger picture and the healthcare giant and a hospital system as a giant. So I'm curious on what are some things that the hospital in general struggle with.
So I haven't been in a hospital setting in many years, so I can't talk to it other than what I hear. I have family, that are many family members that are still in healthcare, and of course clients that speak with me. And from what I read, I think that again, there are a lot of struggles. It kind of goes back to what I had said. It's just what they're struggling with is reimbursement. It's length of stay. It's that all the patients that are in the hospital are they're sick, right? I mean, anyone who's not really sick are not in a hospital any longer. So their reimbursements are being cut. The nurses tend to not want to it seems to me, be at the bedside any longer for the reasons that we spoke about, as far as staffing and resources and maybe scheduling. So it's extremely challenging. I haven't been in that situation, for years now. But it's not easy. It's not easy. At the end of the day, it's a business. They have to keep the lights on and they have to pay employees. So, it would be nice if you didn't have to do that and always just focus on the patient, but it's finding that balance, right? And that harmony, so to speak, with doing the right thing for the patient and staff, and then being able to keep the shop open, so to speak.
And did you mention you also are a huge advocate for communication? You mentioned communication and work culture, correct?
Yeah, well, my first business was Health Literacy Partners, which is, health literacy is huge to me. It's very important. So that's verbal communication, written communication, and also environmental communication. So it's, how patients access care, how they, when you talk with a patient, how that's information's communicated. It's the information that they receive as far as printed materials. It's signage in the building or in the parking garage. it's how the facility is laid out. I mean, it touches on everything. It touches culture, patients' cultural preferences, language preferences. So I still do that as well. But right now, my main focus is the wellness of the healthcare professionals, because I think nursing is the best career there is. I think we're so blessed to be able to be in it. And I think that the nurses, especially the nurses, all the healthcare professionals really are suffering now. So I just wanted to, I pivoted again just to try to give back to the nursing community. But yeah, the communication's a big part of that too, right? If you can't communicate, you can't coach people.
Yeah, I'm glad you pivot into wellness, because we need to fill our own cups as nurses. We talk about it all the time, not only from a mental standpoint, but of a physical and the whole mind body approach. So in your wellness journey, I think there's 5 pillars that you mentioned something about TAP. Can you talk about those?
Yeah, but wellness isn't just about the food we eat, which people, always tend to focus on. And when I was doing research, I did not see any wellness coaching programs that were specifically geared toward the unique work-life balance or harmony that nurses and healthcare professionals deal with. So the 5 pillars that I pulled together were that holistic approach. So it's about enjoying food, it's moving more, sleeping soundly, building resilience, which is a huge part of it, and practicing self-care. So they're all integrated. It's a 12-week program. We have group coaching, small group coaching, and then we also do one-to-one coaching. It's all virtual. The other thing, it's virtual because of where we are today, right, in the world. But on the other hand, nurses in facilities, they may have chief wellness offices or chief people offices, different roles that are there for the staff. But often the staff doesn't always feel comfortable opening up to someone at their own organization about, a struggle that they're dealing with, either personally or at work. So I felt that having it virtual, yet, we have Zoom calls and we build community with like-minded people to support them who really get what they're going through and how hard it is, right? It's really challenging. So those are the 5 pillars that we integrate throughout the 12 weeks. And then in addition to that, we have an app, like many other apps that send daily messages to people's phones, inspirational, educational, motivational messages. The difference with this is that all the messages are geared towards a healthcare professional. So if we're talking about sleep, we're talking about shift work. If we're talking about eating lunch, we realize that nurses in many units may only get 15 minutes for lunch, if that. It's very specific to the healthcare professionals' needs.
With the 5 pillars, is there one that nurses and healthcare professionals struggle with the most, or maybe one that needs the most improvement for healthcare professionals?
Yeah, it's interesting. Everyone always asks me that, and in my experience, I love food, and I love changing up recipes and experimenting. So I'm always interested in that. But honestly, it seems to be sleep. I think, and they say sleep is so important. I mean, the research that's out now, it's sleeping is one of the, if you sleep less than 7 or 8 hours a night, I don't know the exact citation, but it's almost, it's like a risk factor for heart disease. It's we really need to sleep. And it's so important, and it impacts all the other pillars. And it tends to be a struggle, even for people that are on the day shift. I think it's the 12-hour shifts. They find, they've shared that one night they'll sleep 5 hours or 4 hours, and then the next night they're sleeping 10 or 12 hours. And that, that no routine whatsoever really messes with everything else. It messes with your eating, right? They're wanting to move or not move that day. So it's sleep, I would say, is the one in my experience working with the clients. Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely, I want to say, our biggest inconsistency too. Because I used to work night shift a lot, and when you work nights, everything is out of whack. Your circadian rhythm is all messed up. You know, you're going to sleep and everyone's waking up, and then it's like constant transition from working night. Then when you're off of work, you got transition back to being a normal person, like a normal schedule, and you never have consistent sleep ever. And if it is consistent, it's still you're sleeping during the day. Sleeping during the day is not as like you can say fulfilling as it is during the night. And then you become like a night person where you start doing laundry at like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning because you can't fall asleep. Or you're doing dishes at 3 o'clock in the morning, cooking food. You're just like, what is going on? And it's like, it's doable in early on when you're a new nurse. But then I'm thinking like, hey, if I'm going to be 35, 40, 45 years old, like, am I going to be able to maintain this? Because you have a little bit more resilience when you're younger, but then, you know, when you start to get older, you start to get worn out more. And it just affects your whole life. You become cranky. You're never satisfied.
Right. And then you tend to, you know, you're exhausted all the time. You can't think clearly. You crave food that you shouldn't be eating, or comfort food, you know, that makes you, you know, want to just lay around more. You don't exercise, which I know is, you know, I see is important to you guys. It's really, it affects everything. And then imagine having a family on top of that. You know, so many nurses have families or, you know, parents they need to care for, or children that they need to get to school, and they can't even if they could sleep during the day, you know, they can't. They have to be available for their family during the day for certain things. So it's very challenging. And, you know, on top of that, it's that, you know, one night on, 2 nights off, back on, that back and forth is just really messes with your circadian rhythm. So
what are some recommendations, or what are some things that nurses or anybody struggling with sleep could do today to kind of better themselves? Is it try to get on a day shift schedule? Is this something revolving around routines before bed or sleeping practices? How can they improve themselves?
Yeah, so it's individual, and we work, you know, with each, even though in a group program, we move through the pillars kind of together. Each person's goals and action steps are individual, and we have calls to go over that and set people up for success. So, you know, I would say for some, it depends on the person, but for some suggestions would be to, yes, certainly set a sleep routine, so to speak, you know, before you're ready to go to sleep. It sends signals to your body that you're starting to wind down. So whatever that might be, you know, we always talk about all the things you shouldn't be doing, right? You know, don't have caffeine, don't have alcohol, don't eat, you know, a large meal before going to sleep. So I try to shift it into all the things we can do, right? Instead of talking about the things we shouldn't do. So, you know, if you have a cup of chamomile tea, or you have some foods that help induce sleep or promote sleep, like some nuts, or you know, have a small snack a little while before you're ready to go to bed. Have a routine, shower, you know, whatever that is for you, a warm shower, a bath, meditate, do some stretching, you know, set your room up for success, right? You want it to be dark. If you have it was certain things like that. Oh, you know, it's individual. For me, those blackout curtains and all that stuff never really work. You know, for other people, it works like they're like in a cave. They love it. A cool temperature, you know, treat yourself to some nice bedding, you know, put on a diffuser in your room with some lavender, chamomile, you know, every person's different, but those are some of the things that we work. But it's the key, I think, really, though, is finding those 1 or 2 things that you want to start to implement, and then being consistent with it, right? If you aren't consistent, your body will never get into that rhythm. And when you're alternating shifts, it's important to have a separate day shift sleep routine, right? And a evening or a night shift sleep routine, right? They're going to be different. If you're going to go back and forth, or which most people do. I know people will say, stay on the night shift, even on your days off. But, you know, I think that's not really reasonable for many people to do that when the world is going on about you and you're home. So we always say to, you know, try to keep those different routines separate, but have a routine for each shift that you get accustomed to doing. And it sends a signal to your body to start to slow down, wind down. And you know what helps a lot of people is after they get off that night shift in the morning, of course, don't have a cup of coffee on the way home. Don't stop and eat a large meal. Wear like sunglasses though, like especially if it's bright in the morning when you come home, just to not get that bright light that signals to your body to wake up, right? So kind of wear dark sunglasses and kind of keep your activities to a minimum, before if you're going to head off to sleep right when you get home.
That works great. So
Not
now,
easy.
No, not at all.
I'm laughing when you say do things lightly before the night routines, because sometimes Peter and I will hit a heavy workout before we go to bed, but then we just knock out like babies. So I love how you said it's very individualized as far as what works for everybody.
It does. So you have to assess, or take a look at what they're currently doing, what's working and what's not, and then together co-create those goals or those action steps that they're willing, to start implementing and that they can implement with everything else that they have going on in their life. Yeah. But it's funny. Some of the people I've worked with are like, oh my gosh, I've been trying to do this for years and I'm finally I haven't slept like this. It's so nice to hear when someone's able to do it. And then the key is maintaining that, right? And not slipping back into the old habits again, right?
That's so true. And I know for the past 2 years, burnout and overcoming that has been a huge struggle for many nurses. In your program or in general, in your experience, what are some self-care practices that nurses could partake in, or some favorites that you noticed that has worked very great for nurses?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, very individual for people. Someone will say, oh, I want to go walk along the beach. And another person will be like, oh, I almost drowned when I was a kid. I hate the beach. I get nervous by the water, so it's like they like looking at the mountains. So everyone is a little different. But I think the most important thing is scheduling that self-care activity, right? I mean, like it's anything else that we would schedule, that's a priority. So making sure whether it's a hobby that someone's picking up, whether it's exercise that they enjoy for self-care because they find it's good for their body and their mind, reading a book, watching a movie, going for a walk, going out in nature. Everyone is different, but the key is to really schedule it and prioritize it and not let that the thing that goes off your list. And again, there's certain things you can do. If you start it in the morning, if you can, on a day that you're off, you get it in, and all the other things that get in the way don't. That tends to be the one thing that a person will let go, right? Oh, I'll do that tomorrow. I don't have to do that. So it's scheduling it. The resilience part, I think, is tough for nurses, honestly. And they're all like interrelated. So what someone might do for resilience might also feed their self-care cup, right? Or fill that cup as well. But the resilience is, setting those boundaries, right? At work and at home, which then would help with your self-care, so to speak.
And I love how you mentioned resilience, because these past 2 years we've been struggling with resilience and overcoming all the hurdles that the healthcare system has burdened us with, especially the workload. So, we could have resilience physically, but I think it's very important for nurses to have mental resilience. And one of them is just having the mindset of overcoming your shift or overcoming the obstacles, maybe eliminating the negative self-talk that plays out, or this is going to be difficult, this is never going to get better. Because I feel like that negative self-talk, especially collectively on a unit culture, which I'm sure you could talk about, is going to affect not only the nurse, which is providing the care, which could be you, but also it's like a cancer in the body that stays there, that's affecting the whole culture, that affects and ultimately makes us less resilient to overcome a shift, right?
Right. I mean, less resilient in life, right? So resilience, I mean, it's not just for when you're at work, right? If you don't have that resilience and those skills, that creeps into your personal life too, because it's not like a switch that goes on and off. It kind of follows you everywhere, right? So I think it's really important. The narrative that, that self-talk that you just mentioned is key. And it's that's exactly what happens in a unit, right? It's like, it's almost like after you take an exam back in the day, and you didn't know about one answer, and you come out and you're thinking, oh, I don't know if I got that right. And you hear someone saying, oh, this is the choice. And then other people start, and everyone's talking, and none of those are the choices that you had put. And you get that feeling, and you say, oh, I'm just going to walk away from this, right? Instead of chiming in and piling on. It's the same type of thing. So I think nurses really have to try to, as best they can, change that narrative. And we talk about that, in the program, because it becomes a habit, and it's like a tape that just plays over and over. So change that narrative, have more positive self-talk, set boundaries for yourself personally at work and, professionally. Say no more if you need to, especially now, with them needing, the hospitals needing nurses at the bedside. They'll, wave that carrot in front of you of, that extra bonus, or, time and a half, or we'll throw in a $500 bonus, or, I've said so many times to so many, people, in my family and client, comes a point where it's not worth your health, right? Your mental health, your physical health. So it's really setting those boundaries and trying to find that work-life harmony, I like to call, because I don't believe in balance, honestly. I think each of us has to figure out a way to live in a harmonious way that works for us. But it's not balance, because you can't balance your work and what we're doing as nurses and our home. There's no balance there. So I don't believe in that notion. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good term, work life harmony, because one of the biggest things that we see for nurses that reach out to us like for help and guidance is a lot of them have an issue with it's an issue with them bringing the emotions they experience at work, bringing that home, and almost like having like self-sabotaging behaviors, like just feeling sad and bad for people outside the workplace, because it's hard for them to separate their work life from their reality, their own life at home. So what kind of a guidance can you give those nurses or healthcare professionals?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. Again, it's like a learned behavior, right? So trying not to do that is important. I think I'm going to say it again, it's individual, but I think one thing that is so helpful is when you leave work, have some sort of a routine. So, I mean, some people, I've even suggested this may sound funny to some people or a little weird, but bringing, sweatpants or some comfy clothes that you would normally like get into at home. Like if you're kind of winding down, going to put on a movie or something, and before you leave work, change into those comfy clothes, or bring a pair of comfy slippers, something that like just associates you with being at home, being comfortable, winding down. Whether you have that, if you have that drive home, obviously, if you're taking public transportation, it's a little different. But before you leave the hospital, it kind of separates, right? Your work from your home. I'm getting into my comfy sweats. I'm putting on my comfortable, flip-flops, and I'm already winding down. I'm not thinking about work. I'm making that distinction. So I mean, that's something that people have done that they find it very helpful. They shift into that different mode. Getting on the phone, talking about the patient or what happened. I mean, it's good to debrief when necessary, of course, but not to constantly be thinking about it as you're laying there trying to go to sleep, right? Did I give that med? Oh, I think I gave that med, or did I, whatever is playing back in your head, it's done, it's over. That's a little different than debriefing from something that may have occurred in the unit that you should talk about and then done with it. Yeah. But it is.
So another big thing, especially for like newer nurses, is self-confidence and building confidence. So how can you how can you make yourself more confident, and how can maybe I help somebody build their own confidence?
Yeah, I think for a new nurse, it's got to be so challenging, right? Today, I mean, I think of the nurses that came out during COVID, and started just working in that environment, kudos to them. I think that finding one or two people in their unit, or if they're working, at the bedside in a unit, that they feel comfortable going to, like almost like a mentor or, a colleague to talk to reach out to, they feel comfortable, is key. It doesn't have to be a lot of people. It could be one person that, they could go to ask a question or find support. I think it's important. And taking the time to really think about finding that mentor, so to speak, is huge. And I always found that I always had mentors for things that I admired, right? Or that I would strive for, or like you'd say, oh, I'd love to be able to do that one day in my career. But I also had mentors that I'd say, that's a behavior I never want to do, right? So I had mentors kind of on both sides of it, so to speak, where I'd say, I definitely don't want to lead nurses like that person, and then others that I did admire what they did and wanted to be like them. So I think a new nurse can start parsing out, the people that they feel connected to, that they could learn from, that they can get support from, that they can vent to, is key. And for us as nurses, being there to support, it's being, non-judgmental and open and kindness, right? That's kind of gone by the wayside sometimes. So yeah, just being human, right? And just being a kind, open, accepting person, I think is key. And inviting them, if you're getting a coffee break and there's a new nurse, as a traveler, you deal with this, right? You're constantly going into a new situation. It's so challenging. You're kind of on that other side where you probably don't know the staff. You don't know the environment, you don't know the codes to the bedroom, and all these, it's hard, so having that some person that smiles at you, that you feel that you could approach and ask a question, is key.
Okay. And I'm going to add on to that point. I love the wisdom that we're sharing here, is to become more self-confident as a new grad, is be your own cheerleader. So just like you are your own worst critic, you have to give your own hype. Even though you might be looking for it from a preceptor, from somebody else in the unit, how about we fill our own cup as well in that aspect, where after a shift, after something you did, what if you reflect on the great things that you did for your patients, reflect on how awesome your shift was, give yourself a pat on the back, because you're going to create a compound effect. Instead of giving yourself your own worst critic or judging yourself how shitty it was, you're going to start reprogramming that language and saying how awesome my shift was, to start gaining confidence in other things that you're uncomfortable with as a healthcare professional.
Yeah, it goes back to the changing the narrative of what you focus on, right? And what you say to yourself. So it's all interrelated. It's all a part of that. Yeah, for sure.
If we're in a perfect scenario and maybe budgets weren't a thing and finances, what are the things that you would love to implement in healthcare if you had the ability to?
Oh gosh, the magic wand question, huh? I think for patients and communities, I think access for care is like so important. I don't think, everybody doesn't have access to quality, affordable healthcare, which I think is key. So, I think access for patients would be number one. For staff, I think, I think we need to give nurses a seat at the table, at every table. Whatever's being discussed in the organization or the health system, wherever, I think a nurse has to be at every table and bring that perspective to that decision, to that discussion, whether it's with the finance person or the quality person or engineering or, anything. A nurse's perspective is huge when we're talking about healthcare. So they need a seat at every single table. That would be, if I could pick one thing, that would be that.
Mm. And with TAP, you mentioned it's a 12 weeks of like coaching and all that kind of stuff. Can you give us a little bit of insight on what to expect? Is it every day is a different step? Do you hit on the 5 pillars in 5 different sessions, or how does that work? What can someone expect if they decide to do some of your coaching and get some of your
Yeah,
insight?
no, I'd be happy to share that. So initially, if in the group program, when the person signs up, they'll get a invitation to download the TAP app, which is available, on Google Play or the Apple Store. And people can go on there, by the way, and just do like a 5-day trial for free of the app. The coaching is much more than the app, of course. So they'll sign up, download the TAP app, and then fill out their intake form. And then we do a one-on-one call to set up their goals for what success would look like for them at the end of the program, and what they'd like to focus on for the next 2 weeks. We move through the program. The first 2 weeks are setting people up, kind of assessing where they're at in each pillar, assessing their home and personal, kind of stage where they are. And then we go through each pillar for 2 weeks. But it doesn't mean that the person that's in the program focuses only on their goal for that pillar. We move the person through as however they need. I believe each person should always start with their weakest pillar, right? Because they'll be able to gain success a lot easier that way. And then that builds motivation. So that's always a suggestion, but we do what people want. So someone wants to start with sleep, but maybe our first 2 pillar that we focus on is food. That's okay. So we're working on sleep with them, but they're also learning and getting education about food. And we take them through every 2 weeks in the group program. We have a live Zoom call with the others in the group. So they build community. They can also communicate with each other in the TAP app in the community side of the program to share recipes and stuff. They can direct message me. The real purpose of the app is for them to communicate with me directly. So at any point of the time, they can send me a DM and I can respond to them. They're going out to dinner. They're overwhelmed. They don't know what they want to eat or what would be a better choice for them. If it's along their goal, they can send me a message, or they're trying to go to sleep and they have a question. They don't have to wait. They can just DM me and I'll get back to them. So that's the main purpose of the app. But then each day they will get a little message from TAP in the app focusing on whatever pillar we're on. And that changes. We do weekly check-ins through the app. We have other calls if needed, if they need an extra resource. Lots of times the resources that they request are for, maybe a meditation or a mantra that they want to try before they go to sleep, or a recipe they're looking for because they're cooking for their family and they want a special recipe. So I'll research that and send over a recipe collection. So we move through as a group, and then at the end, and as we're going through those weeks with the pillars, we also incorporate the resilience and the self-care. Those are themes that are carried throughout because it's as I said, it's all interrelated. So that's the program as a whole. And it's really sad to see. Actually, I got a message last night from someone who was just in the program, missing you, loved you. We have a weekly newsletter that goes out, an email essentially that focuses on different parts of the program. So I get a lot of messages from the people who still get the weekly newsletters. If anyone wants to sign up, it's Tuesdays with TAP. So every Tuesday they get a short little email about one of the pillars. But it's nice because that prompts them, and then they send me a little message. So we stay connected. It's, again, building community, right? Being there for people. And the one-to-one program is essentially the same type of program, but much more intense, bespoke. We schedule the calls. We do weekly calls instead of every 2 weeks. And obviously it's scheduled around what works for that person. And we do a bit of a deeper dive there as to their needs. Some people don't feel comfortable in a group setting, sharing more personal information or behaviors, and prefer that one-to-one where they can really dive deep and spend the entire hour talking about them and not having to listen to other people. So everyone's different.
And
Go ahead.
what's the website link?
It's tapwellnesscoaching.com.
Is there anything
I'm on
that,
Ins-
let's go ahead.
no, I was gonna say Instagram as well. It's all the same.
Is there anything that surprised you working with healthcare professionals? Maybe, for example, some wild goals that they had, or maybe you realized how determined to change healthcare professionals were. Anything surprised you with working with healthcare professionals?
Um, Surprise, not really. I mean, I think I was a little, I guess just because maybe I had a little bias, but I thought it was going to be mostly food. Everyone's always talking about food, intermittent fasting and, who's vegan, who's doing paleo, so, I thought that would be in the beginning. And as I said, tends to be sleep, but, hydration is a challenge for the nurses. Um, so I think that was one thing, but I think that now that I'm thinking about it, I think the lack of understanding of, like, when we spend that first week looking at each pillar for each person and kind of looking at and we give them, suggestions of how to do that. I think them not even taking the time to realize that they're sleeping 5 hours one night and 10 or 12 the next, that they go for 9 or 10 hours without eating or drinking or going to like they don't even they're not even noticing, what really they're doing. And I think that was the biggest, if I had to pick something, is the not being aware of how all those things impact how they're feeling. And then they're like, oh, no wonder why. Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that,
And it
So
also,
yeah.
I was just going to say, it
Go
makes
ahead.
sense because looking at our educational system in nursing school, it's always about patient first. And again, we're never filling up our own cup again. And you have nurses that go 6-7 hours at the beginning of the shift without taking a single sip or even emptying out their bladders. So
Right.
it's a recurrent theme.
But then they find that too, that they'll say, and then first day off, right, at home, they have all these things they want to do and they just sleep, they crash, right? Sleep for 12 hours. And then if they can, so it's that, up and down, and it's no one, as one person said, often, no wonder I'm feeling so crappy, of course, if you look at it and you write it down and you see it, it's like, oh yeah, makes perfect sense. And we're in the field of caring for people, because it's so it's kind of ironic, right?
And one last question we'd like to ask all of our guests. If you had the opportunity to have a cup of coffee with anybody one last time, who would it be and why?
That's easy for me. That would be my dad. My dad passed away. Actually, next March will be 15 years. So he was the person I always spoke to about all my goals. I want to write a book by time whatever, 40 or 50. I want to be a fan. And he'd be like, that's great, and encourage me. And he wasn't around to see any of it. So I'm sure he's watching down, but yeah, he'd be the person I'd love to catch up the last 15 years with. That would be amazing.
Yeah, it sounds like it was an amazing support system.
Yeah.
Terri, where can people find you if they want to get some more information or seek some help or some coaching?
You can go to tapwellnesscoaching.com, email me at info@tapwellnesscoaching.com. I'm on Instagram, same Tap Wellness Coaching, and Facebook. As I said, we post every single day on Instagram, lots of tips for free and lots of available resources if anyone's interested. And we have a next group coaching is starting. I think it's March 6th is the next group coaching program if anyone's interested. And I'd love to also work with healthcare organizations, right, to help the nurses that they're employing. Imagine when you sign on, you get some coaching, right, as part of your recruitment efforts. That'd be an orientation. So hopefully that will come to fruition soon.
Yeah, it's a really good idea. Matt and I had this idea of go this one of your pillars. The movement one is like, how nice would it be for you to have like a discount for a gym membership or a discount for spa access, just so And that just shows you that like your employer really cares about you because he's giving a discount for you, not just some like random stuff. Like it go a far way because some people just maybe can't afford it, or maybe they need a little bit of a push in the right direction, and that'll go a long way. Like a little discount, like you said, like somebody that got to mentor them or coach them, or just have somebody there that they could speak to freely in an open environment, just so they could express their feeling. Because sometimes it's hard to come home and maybe talk to your spouse about it that doesn't work in the medical field or the healthcare industry, and it's different. You need somebody that has a little bit of a background, a little bit of understanding of what you're going through.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that would be a wonderful thing for as part of orientation to, provide that extra support for new nurses coming into a facility for a couple months, or even as, a perk for people who have been there a long time for retention, to give that to, they have clinical ladders and all these things that they give. Who needs another duffel bag or a water bottle, right? Something like this would, the costs would certainly, the benefits certainly outweigh the costs for that organization. So we'll see. To be continued.
Yeah. Thank you, Terri. Just wanted to acknowledge you for the awesome knowledge that you shared with us, the 5 pillars about resilience, communication. Thank you for sharing your expertise with the nurses and anybody listening, and hope to see you again.
Yes, likewise. And enjoy your time in Thailand. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.